All right, Joshua 22, let's call this one, and the report was good, because this is the chapter in which Joshua is going to call three tribes, or really 2.5 tribes, to himself, the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, to bring the good news. The word is spread about them that they were true to their word, that even though they came into their inheritance on the east side of the Jordan River, as they promised Moses, they would help their brothers on the west side of the Jordan River take their inheritance. And now that things have settled down, Joshua is going to call them to himself and say, you've done well. You've honored your word. You've obeyed me, he's going to say, as having the baton passed to him from Moses. And now go home with much spoil. Share it, because there's plenty to share. Only continue to observe the commands of God the way that you have to this point. Honor him, cling to him, and things will go well with you. And that's the good news, but it creates a rub, because once they get back to their side of the Jordan River, they're going to build an altar, understanding that God had already appointed his places of worship. There was no burnt offering to be made any other place. And so when the Israelites on the west side of the Jordan River get word that those on the east side of the Jordan River have now built an altar, they get ready to go to war, because this is a period of time in Israel's history where they are no longer slack in observing the promises of God, but understanding the history of what happened with Achan, and even going back to the plague averted by Phinehas. They remember, and they don't want to go back down that road. And that is exactly what they are going to say to him when Phinehas is sent as a messenger to go confront those on the east side of the Jordan River and ask them why they have built an altar that would potentially drag the nation back into conflict with God. And so in bringing the message, we talked about this passage before in our classes, saying that you can understand a lot about the message if you understand the messenger. And Phinehas was the one who, at the cost of blood, killed one of his fellow Israelites to stop the plague. And so when they have amassed their numbers to go back to war and they send Phinehas as a messenger, the message is clear. And when he goes back to that period of history, he can speak to it from personal experience, because he's the one who stopped the plague at the cost of violence. And what they're saying, in many ways, seems to be, if it takes violence, that's what we're going to do again. But they're able to make the peace. Why? Because those on the east side of the Jordan River did not build the altar in order to offer burnt sacrifices. They said that the barrier between them, the Jordan River, might cause future generations to see an artificial division between the tribes on the east and west side. And they wanted a memorial, a witness to say that we are one people. And so, hearing that their motives were pure, Phinehas believed them, and he goes back once again, ending this chapter with a good report. Thus the title. The report was good, because it ends with a good report about the tribes on the western side of the Jordan River, and it ends with a report saying that their motives are pure. Therefore, there's no need to go to war. But understand this. I've heard it said that I'd rather ask for forgiveness than permission. And sometimes that might be good for getting your way, but I'm not always convinced about the wisdom of that, even though I can see that there are times when that might make sense. I'm not here to judge that, because I don't have a particular passage of scripture that gives me a whole lot of insight, but I do know that this conflict came about because they did not consult with their brothers before building the altar. And so even if it did resolve peacefully, they amassed their forces to go back to war in a time when everybody could have just been building their houses and moving forward and getting their land settled. But they end up taking time because of a miscommunication, failing to ask permission, having to ask forgiveness. And even though it worked out, the lesson for us is it doesn't always have to have a happy ending. And so the upside of this is that the Western tribes had pure motives, and those motives helped to make the peace in this situation. And to the degree we carry good motives, God willing, we can have similar peaceful resolutions of our conflicts. But God willing, we can avoid conflicts altogether to the degree we are able and willing to combine with our good motives great wisdom from God and see whether or not it really is better to ask forgiveness than permission. And he can help us avoid unnecessary conflicts when we not only have good motives, but we have his wisdom guiding us along the way, which is why we often say his best to you as you go forward in him, God willing, with good motives combined with great wisdom.